Frank tried to make a joke, saying, "Hey, what's the matter? Haven't you ever seen anyone from the planet Hulk Turner before?" But behind the laughter was a story that wasn't funny at all. It was the story of Rocky Dennis, the boy who became famous because of the movie Mask. That movie made him a hero, and it earned $48 million and several awards. But his mother, Rusty Dennis, later said that the film didn't tell the whole truth. In her final interviews, she revealed what the cameras never showed: Rocky's experiments with LSD, the biker gang that raised him, the girl whose parents took her away the moment they saw his face, and the pain of losing everything. This is the real story Hollywood refused to tell. Rocky Dennis was born on December 4, 1961, in Glendora, California. His full name was Roy Lee Dennis. When he was born, everything seemed normal. His mother, Florence Rusty Tullis, was 25 years old, and she thought her baby looked perfect. For the first 2 years, Rocky developed like any other child. He crawled, walked, and talked at the right time. There was no sign of illness. The family had no history of bone disorders, no warning of what was coming. He even had an older half-brother named Joshua from Rusty's previous relationship. They were just an ordinary family living in California, unaware that one simple medical test would change everything. When Rocky was 2, he was scheduled for a routine tonsil surgery. Before the operation, a technician took an X-ray of his skull. What he saw made him stop. There was something strange in the image, a thickening in the skull bones. He immediately reported it to the doctors. That one small discovery changed the course of Rocky's life. Over the next year, Rocky was tested again and again at UCLA Medical Center. Specialists examined his skull and ran every possible test. Finally, in 1964, doctors gave his mother the diagnosis, craniodiaphyseal dysplasia, also known as Leonidas. At that time, only 7 people in the entire world had ever been diagnosed with it. Doctors told Rusty the cruel truth: her son's skull would continue to thicken with calcium until it crushed his brain. His eyes would move to the sides of his head, his hearing and sight would fade, and he would not live past the age of 7. They said it like there was no hope. But Rusty refused to accept that. Rusty was not a traditional mother. Born in Brooklyn in 1936, she had been rebellious since childhood. She smoked at 14, dropped out of school at 15, and started hanging out with bikers. She worked with a motorcycle stunt team until drug use got her kicked out. But that wild background made her strong and fearless, exactly what Rocky needed. When doctors told her to put him in an institution, she said no. She believed her son was smart and capable, and she would treat him like any other child. At age 6, Rocky started going to public school. The administrators were nervous. They said his appearance might frighten other students. They said his condition would hold him back. But they were wrong. Rocky quickly became one of the top students. He was kind, funny, and curious. Though his skull grew larger each year, his mind stayed sharp. By the time he was 6, Rocky was legally blind. His vision was 20 to 200 in one eye and 20 to 300 in the other. Doctors said he would never be able to read. Rusty handed him a book and told him to try. Rocky read it aloud, perfectly. He refused to learn Braille and demanded large print books instead. By age 7, he had already gone to 42 eye appointments, but nothing could stop him. Nurses and doctors were amazed at his strength. Even during painful tests, he never cried. Whenever Rocky had severe headaches, which happened often, Rusty didn't give him medicine. She told him to lie down and heal himself with his mind. "Don't come out until you make yourself better," she said. It sounded impossible, but Rocky somehow managed to do it. He learned to control his pain through deep breathing and mental focus. After Rusty divorced Rocky's father in 1971, their home became a lively place filled with bikers and loud music. Rusty still partied and used drugs, but the biker gang also gave Rocky a strange kind of family. They protected him, cared for him, and made him feel accepted. His brother Joshua watched over him too, even though life was hard. Joshua saw their mother overdose and get arrested. He witnessed the chaos up close but tried to protect Rocky from it. Years later, Joshua moved to San Francisco and became a writer before dying of AIDS. The movie Mask never mentioned him. In 1985, Mask was released, starring Cher as Rusty. The film showed their deep bond but left out many of the darker truths, the drugs, the arrests, and the pain. In reality, Rusty was at her lawyer's office facing charges when she got the call that changed her life. Bernie, her boyfriend, told her that Rocky had died. It was October 4, 1978. He was 16 years old. He had more than doubled the doctor's expectations. He went to school, made friends, and kept his humor until the end. Rocky's disease was one of the rarest in medical history, only about 1 in 220 million births. Most doctors never meet a single patient with it. The condition caused the bones of the skull to thicken and grow, which put pressure on the brain and facial nerves. But Rocky didn't just live, he thrived. When he started first grade in 1967 at Ben Lomond Elementary School in Covina, California, many parents didn't want him there. His face looked different, his skull was twice the normal size, his eyes were wide apart, and his nose looked stretched. People were afraid of how he looked. But Rusty fought back and won. Rocky had every right to attend a regular school, and she made sure he did. Doctors had predicted that Rocky would go blind, deaf, and mentally disabled. Instead, he became one of the brightest students in his class. Because of his vision problems, he took longer to learn to read, but he didn't give up. Teachers provided large print books, and he quickly caught up. He even helped other kids who were struggling. When a doctor once told Rusty that Rocky would never read, she put a book in his hands, and he read every word. "I don't believe in being blind," he said. By third grade, he had become known as one of the smartest kids in the school. He couldn't write much because his fingers were stiff, but his memory was incredible. He could recite entire sections of California history from memory. During group projects, his classmates wrote down what he said. Teachers began to admire him for his intelligence and spirit. But not every day was easy. When he was 10, a group of older boys attacked him on the playground. They threw rocks and called him names like freak and monster. Rocky came home crying, asking his mother why he was so ugly. Rusty told him, "If people laugh at you, laugh with them. If you act beautiful, people will see you that way." Rocky never forgot that. From then on, he used humor to protect himself. He joked about his appearance before anyone else could. Once, he layered several Halloween masks on his face and told people they were stuck. Everyone laughed with him, not at him. At age 10, he entered a school science fair. Despite being partially blind and in pain, he built a working volcano model, painted it, and explained it perfectly to the judges. They thought an adult had helped him until he began describing how magma chambers form pressure under the Earth's crust. He won first place, a blue ribbon and a $25 savings bond. For the first time, his classmates saw him not as the boy with the face, but as the boy with a brilliant mind. As Rocky got older, his condition worsened. By 14, his skull was pressing hard on his brain, causing unbearable headaches. He could barely hear from one ear and was legally blind. But he refused painkillers. Instead, he practiced his breathing exercises. He still sat in the front row of every class, listening carefully. Teachers often saw him helping other students with their homework. His report cards were full of honors. One teacher, Barbara Silva, remembered how kind he was. She once walked into the library and saw him tutoring another student in math. He was always patient and smiling, she said. Even as the disease made life harder, Rocky never stopped learning. In junior high, the school counselor suggested moving him to a special education program, but Rusty refused. She believed he was just as capable as anyone else. And she was right. Rocky continued to get top grades, and his sense of humor and kindness made him popular among classmates. He had dreams like any teenager. He wanted to travel, maybe become a writer or a teacher. He fell in love once with a blind girl from a nearby school. They wrote letters and spent time together until her parents met him. When they saw his face, they forbade her from seeing him again. Rocky was heartbroken, but he never showed it in public. By 16, his health was failing. His headaches were constant, and he struggled to stay awake in class. But even then, he was still the same funny, warm boy everyone loved. On October 4, 1978, he died in his sleep. His mother found him in his bed, his head resting on his arm. Rusty was devastated. She kept his ashes in an urn shaped like a motorcycle helmet. For years, she visited schools to talk about her son's life and the importance of accepting others for who they are. She said Rocky's real legacy wasn't just surviving a rare disease, it was showing the world how to live without shame or fear. Rocky Dennis's life was short, but it was powerful. He proved that courage isn't about looking perfect or fitting in, it's about refusing to give up when everyone else thinks you should. The world saw a boy with a disfigured face, but his mother saw what mattered most, a brilliant, kind, and determined young man who taught everyone around him what real beauty is. Rocky Dennis's life was unlike anyone else's. He was born on December 4, 1961, in Glendora, California, and at first, everything seemed completely normal. His mother, Florence Rusty Tullis, thought he was a perfectly healthy baby. For the first 2 years, he grew and developed just like any other child. He played, talked, and laughed, and there was no sign that anything was wrong. But during a routine checkup for tonsil surgery when he was 2, doctors took an X-ray that changed everything. The image showed strange bone growths in his skull. After months of tests and hospital visits, doctors diagnosed him with craniodiaphyseal dysplasia, a condition so rare that only 7 people in the world had ever been diagnosed with it. The doctors told Rusty that her son's skull would grow so thick and heavy that it would eventually crush his brain. They said his eyesight and hearing would fade and that he would not live past 7 years old. They were certain he would die young. But Rusty refused to believe them. Rusty wasn't like most mothers. She had grown up tough, rebellious, and wild. She used drugs, rode motorcycles, and lived fast. But that fierce attitude made her the perfect mother for Rocky. She refused to let doctors or anyone else decide what her son's life would look like. When they suggested putting him in a special institution, she said absolutely not. She fought for him to live a normal life and to go to a regular school. And he did. When Rocky started public school at age 6, school officials tried to stop him. They said other children would be scared of his appearance and that his learning might suffer. But Rusty pushed back and won. Rocky attended regular classes and soon became one of the top students. His skull was growing abnormally, but his brain worked perfectly. He loved learning and helping others. He made friends easily and was voted the friendliest camper at school events. He never wanted pity. Even when he became legally blind by the age of 6, he refused to learn Braille. He demanded large print books and learned to read them on his own. When a doctor said he would never read, Rusty handed him a book, and he proved them wrong on the spot. By age 7, he had already gone to 42 eye appointments. Despite all his medical problems, Rocky handled pain in a way most adults couldn't. Whenever he had headaches, his mother told him to go into his room and heal himself with his mind. And somehow, he did. Through breathing and focus, he learned to control his pain without medicine. Rocky's home life was far from ordinary. His parents divorced when he was 10, and after that, his mother's house became a hangout spot for bikers. Rusty was deeply involved with the Turks' motorcycle gang. Their home smelled of weed, loud music played all night, and motorcycles lined the driveway. Drugs were everywhere. But those same bikers treated Rocky like one of their own. They protected him, joked with him, and made him feel like family. Even though his world was surrounded by chaos, he always found a way to shine. His older half-brother, Joshua, loved him deeply and tried to shield him from the darkness at home, but Joshua eventually left. He later became a writer but sadly died from AIDS. Life around Rocky was hard, but he continued to prove that nothing could break him. In school, Rocky worked harder than anyone. By 3rd grade, he couldn't write well because his fingers had stiffened, but his memory was so sharp that he didn't need to. He could remember entire history lessons word for word and recite them to his classmates. His teachers were amazed. When other students struggled, he helped them with their math or reading. He even tutored them for a few dollars an hour. But it wasn't always easy being different. At age 10, some older boys bullied him on the playground, threw rocks at him, and called him cruel names. That night, he asked his mom why he was so ugly. Rusty told him something that stayed with him forever: if people laugh at you, laugh with them. If you act beautiful, people will see you that way. From that day forward, Rocky used humor to protect himself. He turned his pain into laughter. When people stared, he'd joke first. Once, he wore multiple Halloween masks on top of each other and told everyone they got stuck. Everyone laughed, but this time, they were laughing with him, not at him. Rocky continued to surprise everyone. He entered a school science fair at age 10 and built a working volcano model by himself. Judges didn't believe he had done it, but when he explained chemical reactions in detail, they were speechless. He won first prize and a $25 savings bond. His picture was even in the local paper. Teachers who once doubted him now admired him. As Rocky grew older, his condition worsened. His skull grew heavier and his headaches more painful. Yet, he never took painkillers. He used deep breathing to ease the pressure inside his head. At Sandburg Junior High, his teachers saw how brilliant he was. He gave a presentation on the Trojan War that students still remembered years later. He joked about the story, making his class laugh with his humor and confidence. When students stared too long, he calmly told them, "If I make you uncomfortable, you can move. I can't change my face." That confidence made people respect him. Before graduation, Rocky was offered a job as a counselor's aide at Camp Bloomfield, a summer camp for blind children. At first, he wasn't sure if he could do it, but the camp staff saw something special in him. They knew he could inspire others. He showed kids how to move safely, how to be brave, and how to live without fear. That's where he met Diana Adams, a blind girl who couldn't see his face but saw who he really was. She touched his face to understand what he looked like, and he taught her about colors using textures, warm stones for red, icy ones for blue. They fell in love, and for a while, it was beautiful. But when Diana's parents met Rocky, they were horrified by his appearance. They forbade her from seeing him again, cut off her contact, and took her away. Rocky never saw her again. He was heartbroken but refused to speak badly of them. He just quietly accepted it. Still, it hurt deeply. It was one of the few things that truly broke his spirit. At home, Rusty continued her wild lifestyle. Drugs were still around, and parties never stopped. Rocky saw everything. He experimented with LSD and marijuana once but quickly decided it wasn't for him. "I don't know why people do that stuff," he told his mom. "I'm already higher than most people." That one line summed up who he was: aware, grounded, and full of humor, even in pain. But the drugs and chaos around him eventually took a toll. He loved his mom but couldn't ignore how unstable things were. His friends meant the world to him. One of his closest friends, Ben, shared his dream of biking across Europe. They planned every stop, every route, and every city they'd visit. Rocky couldn't play sports, but he knew baseball stats by heart, and he and Ben bonded over those little things. When Ben got a job in Michigan and moved away, Rocky felt like his dream had died. It wasn't just losing a friend, it was losing hope. High school was harder. Kids could be cruel, and though Rocky was used to stares, the loneliness hit him differently. When one boy mocked him, Rocky finally snapped and slammed him into a locker. After that, people respected him. He wasn't just a kid with a strange face anymore. They invited him to parties, and he started to feel accepted again, even if it was brief. In 1978, Rocky's health declined rapidly. His skull's growth caused unbearable pressure on his brain. Doctors suggested surgery that might relieve some pain, but he refused. He didn't want to change his face. "Who will I see in the mirror if I change my face?" he asked his mom. He had learned long ago to take pride in being himself. Rusty once told him, "Everyone can look like anyone else, but no one can look like you." He carried that with him until the end. By September 1978, Rocky was in a wheelchair. He had stopped tutoring, stopped going out, and spent most of his time in his room. His dreams of Europe faded as his condition worsened. The last few weeks of his life were full of pain. He still joked and smiled sometimes, but everyone could see he was fading. On the night before he died, he woke up in the middle of the night with a terrible headache. His mom comforted him and told him to go to his room and heal, like always. Before going, he made her promise never to put him on a machine to keep him alive. "I want to die at home," he said. Those were his final words. The next morning, Rusty was at her lawyer's office dealing with a drug case when her boyfriend Bernie called. Rocky had died in his sleep. He was only 16 years old. Even after death, Rocky kept giving. He had told his mother he wanted his body donated to science so doctors could learn more about his condition and help others. UCLA used his remains for decades to study bone growth and calcium buildup. There was no funeral, no headstone, just a quiet cremation after his wish was fulfilled. Rusty later said that the movie Mask, which was based on Rocky's life, only showed part of the truth. It showed the love but not the chaos, not the drugs, not the pain. She admitted that their home was wild and that Rocky had experimented with drugs once. She said she never forgave herself for not being home when he died. That guilt stayed with her until her own death in 2006. But despite everything, Rocky's story mattered. His courage helped change how schools treated children with disabilities. His medical case helped doctors understand his rare disease better. And his life inspired millions through the film that told even a fraction of his truth. Rocky Dennis was more than his illness, more than the face people couldn't look away from. He was brave, kind, and brilliant. He lived twice as long as doctors said he would. He laughed at what should have broken him. He helped others see beauty where they thought there was none. He taught people that strength isn't about muscles or fame, it's about surviving with heart. Rocky never stopped being himself, and that's what made him unforgettable.